big thing that we're doing that too.
They had a lot of problems.
These masks go. hid some stuff in there to see if you read it. You see all the hidden messages?
Yes.
We put some hidden messages in there.
Yes.
There's a Christmas tree on one.
No, it's not.
I thought somebody doing that one time in graduate school. They got in trouble for that. So they don't read them.
My daddy did that for Christmas one year. He put money in a book.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to the November 9th, 2020 meeting of the Wilson County Board of Education. This meeting is being hosted on the Zoom video conference platform. It's being streamed on the Wilson County Schools YouTube channel and can be seen on Spectrum and Greenlight channels 22. I'd like to ask for an approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell,
I move we approve the agenda for the November 9th, 2020 Wilson County Board of Education meeting.
Second.
it has been moved by Mrs. Powell, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? If none, please record your vote. Mr. Farmer?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Breen? And myself, Dr. Fitch. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. All members of the board are present, and we have Dr. Mills, senior staff, and various staff members on the call with us. I'd like to welcome County Manager Denise Steinagel, and any others that I'm not seeing on my screen at this particular time.
Commissioner Atkinson.
Pardon me?
Commissioner Atkinson is here.
Commissioner Atkinson is on. Thank you so very much. And am I missing anyone else? All right. Mr. Mercer, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to be followed by a moment of silence?
Yes, ma'am. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the board, we have our minutes to be approved. Please note that even though we had approved the minutes of August the 17th, there was a 2-paragraph omission so that the minutes have been revised. We need to approve the revised minutes. I think the 2 paragraphs are on page 6 of your information in your packet. We also need to approve the minutes of our regular board meeting of October 19th, 2020. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I move that we approve the minutes of the revised minutes of August the 17th, 2020, with the corrections or additions found on page 6, and the October 19th regular board meeting 2020.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve the revised minutes of August 17th, 2020, and the October 19th, 2020 regular board meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Farmer?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Breen? Myself, Dr. Fitch. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Now to the agenda is the chairman's report. And first, let me offer congratulations to those persons who will be joining the Board of Education at our December meeting. Mrs. Barnes and Mr. Mercer for their re-election, and Mr. Borkin for his election for District 6. We thank Mr. Roger Hudson, Mr. Ned Olinger, and Mr. Henry Williams for having expressed their interest to serve and for having run for the office. We wish each of them the best in all future endeavors and hope that they continue to keep the interests of the students of Wilson County Schools in their forethoughts. On behalf of the entire board, I extend a heartfelt thank you to Mr. Farmer for his 12 years of service to the children of Wilson County. Mr. Farmer, your voice of reason and knowledge in many areas have not gone unnoticed and are deeply appreciated. We wish you the best in the days and years ahead with whatever endeavors, if any, you choose to undertake. We hope that you enjoy the beach and the time with your family after this meeting. And please note that your service on this board does not end until the new member is sworn in to replace you in December. So if for any reason we have to have another meeting before then, you're still on tap, sir. So please have that understanding and we'll be good. I'd like for each of you to join me in giving Mr. Farmer a round of applause for his service.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Last week, the North Carolina School Board Association had its annual conference. And like everything else, the format changed because the conference was a virtual conference. Technical glitches, yes, but still, the conference went on. Each year there are contests that are held for students, video contests at the middle and high school levels, and a poster contest at the elementary level. In the past, we have made submissions, and this year we made submissions as well. And what do you know? Wilson County Schools, awards, awards, awards. So, we are proud to announce the various winners from the poster contest. In the K2 category, we had Julius Wiggins, a first grader at Wells Elementary. Third place winner, Julius Wiggins, and first place winner was Lucas Davis from New Hope Elementary. At the 3rd through 5th grade level, we had second place, Irene Lee at New Hope Elementary, and Kinsley Hill from New Hope Elementary. Let's give these students a round of applause, because ordinarily we would be sharing this in our good news component, so we still view this as good news. And then at the middle school and the high school level, for the video contest, we did have a 3rd place video winner. That information is not available now, but we will make sure we announce which of the schools that was. And Fike High School had an honorable mention at the high school level in the video contest. So let's give those students and teachers and staff a hand clap, please, for their hard work. Still winning. And from what I understand, we just kept having Wilson County's name called, and called. So, first of all, let us thank and recognize the county commissioners for Wilson County for having been nominated by this board and for being named by the North Carolina School Boards Association as the County Commissioners of the Year. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause. Your efforts and support for us is so deeply appreciated. We do have Ms. Steinagel and the Vice Chair, Mr. Atkinson, on the call with us, so we're going to allow both of them, or one of them, whichever, to make comments if you would like to.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Mills, for nominating us, and we're honored and humbled at the same time, and we greatly appreciate the working relationship that we have with the board, and thank every one of you for the work that you do for improving education in our county. Thank you.
You're so welcome, and my apologies for not having recognized. That was the County Commission Chair, Mr. Rob Boyette.
Good deal.
And we thank you so very much. We do have Mr. Atkinson on the line, on our call, and Ms. Steinagel. I don't know if any other board members are there or not, but Mrs. Steinagel, do you have any comments to make?
Yeah, I turn your microphone on and off.
We're just delighted to be recognized, and we thank you very much for the honor that you bestowed upon us to be recognized for this phenomenal award.
We're sorry that you could not be here with us in person, and we would love to have you here, but we thank you so much, and we hope that our working relationship will continue as well as it has been, and will continue in the future, and we just thank you so very much. Mr. Boyette, you're down there at the whirligig. I see them behind you. Nice screenshot behind you, sir. Okay. Also, congratulations to this board. We nominated our board for its work, and we were named the Wilson County Board for their Leadership Award. And so we thank, and I thank each of you personally for the hard work that goes into our continued success for here in Wilson County. I'm happy that the association recognized us for the hard work. But I would be remiss without thanking Amber, Lynch, and Iceland, and whomever for their hard work and their writing skills in putting these nominations together. I had the opportunity to read the nomination support letters as well as the nominating form, and an outstanding job was done. And if other members of the board have not had the opportunity to see those nomination forms and what was written both about our county commissioners and about our board itself, I'm sure that Amber will make that information available to you. But thank you so very much for the hard work that went into that. Mr. Mercer, we nominated you to be recognized for the Raleigh Dingman Award winner. The award this year went to the president of the association, Brenda Stevens, but we know that you in our hearts are our own Raleigh Dingman Award winner, and we thank you so much for all that you do for us. And that concludes the chairman's report. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mills for the superintendent's report.
Get last of my stuff. Well, that took away a lot of the items I had, so that's
So sorry.
makes it go that much quicker. But I just wanted to share one particular piece of information and then get input on another item. But this is National School Psychology Week, and I want to take a moment to thank our 6 school psychologists, Ms. Bolding, Ms. Edwards, Ms. Everett-Lenz, Ms. Castillo, Ms. Skinner, and Ms. White. As some of you may know, and others may not know, my background is in psychology, school psychology, so I understand a little bit of how hard they work, working with families and our teachers and administrators to focus on our students' safety and supportive learning environments for them and mental health needs, and their expertise in areas of learning and behavior that really help students improve academically and as well as social and behavioral and emotional functioning. And one area that our school psychologists really focus a lot on is the work that we've been doing on the MTSS, the multi-tiered system of support. It's a framework that provides a research-based targeted support for our students, especially those that are struggling because of mental, behavioral, or academic issues. And that's something that's really you'll hear a lot about across the state right now. They play a large part in that. But it is important to have a good team of psychologists and the work that they do. And a lot of times it is behind closed doors, testing and functioning in and out of meetings and running out of buildings and being itinerant. And I know that work, and we've got a good group, and we're very fortunate to have them. So if you see them, tell them thank you, as you always do, and recognize that this is National School Psych Week. But also one in particular that we should recognize is Amanda Bolding, because she was recently selected as a Power of One Award recipient. And this recognition, let me make sure I read it so you can get it all right. She is sponsored by the National Association of School Psychologists, NASP, and that's to reinforce how school psychologists create meaningful and transformative connections to help students thrive in school, at home, and throughout life. Ms. Bolding was nominated for the way she has advocated for the best practices at the district level through the MTSS team and has demonstrated unmatched leadership within the department. So congratulate her on that recognition. That is a big deal as well. NASP does a good job with supporting psychologists and laying out frameworks for their platform and student-centered interventions. So again, Amanda did a great job to be recognized as a Power of One Award recipient. So big month for them and a big month for her. And Madam Chair, the only other thing I have was to talk to the board about a possible date to look at. We need to follow back up on the track and field issues with the architect. That we've got some preliminary feedback about the ADA information. Dr. Williams and myself and Mr. Letchworth and Mr. Woodard met last week several times, and we've got to have a follow-up conversation with the architects. But we're at the point where once we have that, we need to get back together and get some closure on some of these things so we can get moving and get that settled. So I needed to look at a date, and I would also say that it would be good, I think, for our families, and just as a review, to have a similar meeting focus for reentry as we've looked at where we've been so far and where we can go in the spring. We don't have anything new from the state as of yet, nor are we anticipating anything, but I was thinking if we could look at maybe one date, and again, we're still meeting virtually, that we could have the first part of the meeting to look at some of the information from the architects and have that discussion, and then talk a little bit about where we are with reentry and any information to share before the start of the next semester, before our scheduled December meeting. That will give us time to answer any questions that you have or things come up. So I was looking at Monday, December 7th. I've still got to confirm those dates, that date with the architects, but that's a week before our scheduled meeting. So if there are other things that came up with our school calendar and the reentry and data from that, then that would give us another chance to have a conversation where our parents would be aware and our teachers would be aware.
Members of the board, if you would check your calendars so that we can see if everybody is available at that time, or the majority is available at that time, so that we can move forward. Mr. Farmer.
I'll give him one more.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Mercer.
I'm at your beck and call.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mercer?
Are you looking for a date?
Yes, he's asked for the date of the
That's fine
7th.
with me.
All right. Mrs. Powell?
What time on that day? I have something first thing that morning, but
I
if
was,
it's afternoon, I'm good.
yes, ma'am. I was thinking we could start in the afternoon with the architects first and then transition to the school reentry plan. That way, if folks in the community wanted to view in, that they would have time to do that. Again, we're not anticipating anything changing, but I just thought it'd be a good time to have a conversation as we get ready for the holidays and for the transition.
Okay.
Okay, well, then I'm good for the afternoon.
Okay.
Yes.
Mrs. Barnes?
That is December the 7th.
Yes, ma'am.
Afternoon should be fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Mrs. Boyette?
I'm fine.
All right, Mr. Breen?
Afternoon should be fine.
All right, and myself, that's fine. So please put on your calendars December the 7th for board meeting.
And Madam Chair, board members, I'll work with the architects and get a hard time for the afternoon meeting so we can do that and go from there.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, that's all I had from my report.
All right, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the public input portion. There is no one who has signed up or sent communication in. So we're going to move forward to the next item on our agenda, which is the discussion, information, action. We have 3 items for information: 2019-2020 audit report, contracts requiring board notification, and restart annual report to the State Board of Ed. And then there are 4 items for action, which include the 2020-2021 budget amendments, contracts requiring board approval, approval of school improvement plans, and beginning teacher support program plan. So, Dr. Mills, I'll turn it over to you for the 2019-2020 audit report.
Yes, Madam Chair. Board members, Mr. Stanley is also in the meeting. The audit report you have in front of you has been shared with you ahead of time. I think the important pieces Mr. Stanley can add on, but the important pieces, this is a
Clean audit.
clean audit. And the information is very useful to us as we plan and as you look back over the year. Certainly this year was a bit different with the closure and the pandemic, but the process of procedures checks and audits of our accounting and processes overall are all checked off and done for another year. So I would ask if any questions, Mr. Stanley could go into any details with you.
Mr. Stanley, thank you for being on the call. Members of the board, do you have any questions or comments in regard to the audit that has been presented?
And our auditor is also on the line, Adam, if he may want to speak as well to anything or provide a quick overview. I'm not sure what process you'd like to use, but it's hard to see who's in and out. Sorry, Adam, with the screen.
Yeah. Hello, I'm the partner over the audit engagement. I'm here to answer any questions. I was going to point out a couple of numbers, but if you'd like me to do that, I'm happy to do that. Or if you want to just review the statements on your own, that's okay too. Whatever the board wishes.
Would you go over whatever your numbers were that you wanted to share with us,
Yep.
please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
So again, in front of you, you should have a balanced set of financial statements as well as a letter addressed to the board as the governing body that actually hires us to conduct the audit of management and the statements. We're just providing that letter to you to let you know that the audit went as planned, didn't have any difficulties performing our duties, no disagreements with how to account for anything. And basically that the overall audit plan went as designed. So that's the sum of the 3-page letter. The balance statements, some of the things I want to point out, page 1. The bottom of page 1 is the opinion paragraph. Dr. Mills said that all of the letters, all the opinions within this report indicate what's called a unmodified opinion letter, a clean audit opinion letter. We noted no deficiencies in internal controls, no findings related to state major programs, and no findings related to federal major programs. This year we audited the EC and Title I federal programs And then the state public school fund has to be audited every year for compliance, and that was our major state program for the year. A couple of the numbers I wanted to point out. Page 13, Exhibit 3 and 4 to me are the most important pages in the statements. These are your governmental funds. These show the fund balance and also the change in fund balance for the year. Exhibit 3 is a balance sheet. Exhibit 4 is an income statement. You have your funds across the page here in columns. The first column, your general fund. At the bottom of that first column, you'll see your fund balance numbers. Total fund balance in the general fund is $8.1 million. That's an increase of $2.6 million from the previous year. That $8.1 million of fund balance is made up of a couple of levels. You have about $1 million of non-spendable fund balance in the form of inventories and prepaids. Basically, these are assets to you, but they are not cash assets, so they are not spendable. You also have some fund balance restricted by state statute. This is essentially just your receivables. You cannot budget fund balance for receivables. It's an asset to you, but it is not in the form of cash as of June 30, 2020. Therefore, it cannot be budgeted. Under the assigned column, you have $1.5 million assigned to next year's budget. You have $419,000 assigned for retirement assessments, and your unassigned fund balance is $5.1 million. You also have $1.8 million in your other special revenue, Fund 8. 10 years ago, the local fund, general fund, and Fund 8 were actually combined. These have been separated to form two different funds. You have your general appropriation, which is mainly from the county funding, and then all of your other miscellaneous revenue sources that come into local are in that other special revenue fund. And then, like I said, it has $1.8 million of fund balance. There's also $1.6 million of fund balance in the capital outlay fund and $768,000 at the school level. Page 15 is the income statement for those funds. It shows basically the increases and decreases in fund balance. This year, all increases across the board in fund balance, total of $3.4 million increase in fund balance combined across all of your governmental funds, including that $2.6 million in that general fund, which again is that first column. So all in all, a very, very positive year. We've seen across the state, every district is adding fund balance this year. There are some savings related to the COVID pandemic with not paying substitutes, less overtime, less fuel, less electricity. So there is some savings associated, with this pandemic, but I do not believe it is $2.6 million worth. I think you were probably on track already to add fund balance this year, and this just exacerbated that to, like I said, $2.6 million. That's a significant increase in fund balance in 1 year. Are there any questions there? Those are your governmental funds. Page 21 is the balance sheet for your two business type funds, your proprietary funds. This includes your school food service fund and your child care fund. Exhibit 7 is the balance sheet. Exhibit 8 is the income statement. Exhibit 7, these business type funds, you can't look at fund balance as a determinant of financial health because these funds include their portion of the liabilities for the pension and retirement health benefits. These are actuarially calculated numbers that are assigned to every district. It's part of the $400 million liability for retirement pension benefits, retirement benefits. These are all really state liabilities, but because this is a business type fund, you actually have to record their portion of those liabilities right within the fund. So the better determinant of financial health is the cash and cash equivalents line, and that's at the very top of the page. So your school food service fund has $1.1 million of cash on hand. That's a decrease of $319,000 from last year. and your child care fund has $316,000 on hand, a decrease of $45,000. I think these two funds here are probably the statewide the hardest hit funds when it comes to the effects of COVID, just because it is so hard to keep and maintain the participation that you have when the kids are in school, and converting that over to a summer program and getting meals out to students when they're out of school. So I think the lack or the decrease in participation is going to be a significant drain on these funds all the way through the remainder of the year. And fortunately, you do have local fund balance and local cash that is available to help these funds should they run out of cash. I believe when I was on site doing the audit, we met with Child Nutrition, and they were discussing at the time potentially running out of cash by December. Again, that was 2+ months ago, so I don't know if that has changed. But with only $1 million on hand as of June 30, I would not be surprised if they do require some financial assistance before the end of the year. Those are the main numbers. The rest of the statements are made up of footnotes, accounting policies, a little bit more detail on your assets and liabilities, receivables, payables, fixed assets. There's also in the very back the audit reports for compliance and internal controls. And again, all of those are considered clean, unmodified opinion letters, and noted no deficiencies in internal controls. So all in all, a very good audit report. Significant increase in fund balance, which I think is very important given the uncertain nature of the future. Although I guess today some good news with on the vaccine front, but all in all, still I would much rather be in a position where you are now, not knowing the overall and complete long-term impact financially of this pandemic and how it'll affect future funding from the state and from the county. So if there's no other questions, that's really all I have to present, and I appreciate Art coming in and being able to lead the district through an audit that he was not there for during the year, but I actually worked with Art in Johnston County for a number of years, so he was used to our audit process, and everything went well. So I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Members of the board, do you have any questions? We thank you so very much, and I'm probably going to murder your name. Skeperick?
Sapuric, yes.
Sapuric.
Very good.
All right.
That's about as close as you can get.
Well, I was trying to sound it out as it was written, so my apologies, but thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
For the work that was done. In regard to this, Dr. Mills, I do have a question, because he was saying that there were funds that, we saved that went into fund balance. And given the precarious situation with our food service, they did yeoman's work in making sure that food was provided for our students, and did not have the revenue coming in that they would have had. With the savings that we had from lack of substitutes and that need, is that a transferable amount that can go into the food service or does that just come from unrestricted within the fund balance?
Mr. Stanley, I think, will have to be the final word on some of that. Art, would you want to take part of that one?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It was hard to understand the question. I know it had something to do with substitutes.
If if child nutrition or some other areas needed some additional funds, given the shortfalls with supplemental sales and revenues, is it possible to move some funds around from fund balance or other areas to compensate them while we're in the middle of this pandemic?
Yeah, we would have to take it from that 5.1 billion that's in unassigned
That's
and loan them some.
Yeah, you can't take it from fund balance within those accounts. There's some things you can't. but
Okay.
That's the undesignated fund balance. So
That is correct.
And when you said loan them some, so at what kind of
That's probably
repayment is
It's
that?
probably a harsh word, but no, you could allocate monies to that.
We can
account.
allocate funds to them, okay. All right.
Yep. But I think their last conversations where they were getting back on track with some of the revenues they're seeing and some of the work they've been able to do, we took into account, and Mary Catherine, the director, who's done a great job, and her staff have been looking at their budgets to make projections on what they thought they would be at. Again, some of our feeding programs and some reimbursements will help us and cover us, but it's the loss of that supplemental sales that really pulls their numbers down. I mean, so it's not an issue of dire circumstances where they can't make payroll and things such as that. It's just we need to be sensitive to the fact that their revenues have taken a hit, and that's across the state.
Yes.
So we've been watching that as we go, and I think they've made some allowances for their targets of things and such.
Okay.
And again, we've had other funds come in to try and offset that as well. We've had some additional funds, federal and others. So that's part of the discussion we have as we plan and go through our response team meetings about, we had one last week just about budget with some of the GEARS funding and the CARES funding.
Okay,
So, and those are things we've looked at and keeping an eye on ahead of time, so.
all right.
I think that what Adam was trying to say, which they did a great job with the audit, was to be cognizant and be aware of the fact that this is a statewide issue with especially childcare. You've seen that because you can't have kids in the buildings, and that's affected us greatly. But in child nutrition, they relied on the supplemental sales to get beyond the reimbursable amounts for the system that they normally get. So it's been tight. But again, they have to keep so many months in advance for payroll and surplus as it is. And we've looked at, they've been doing better over the last several years. We've looked at indirect costs for them, which was not the case before I came. There was not enough funds to do some of that, and that pays for their portions of some of what we do. So we balanced that out. We had that conversation just last week about the indirect cost and what would be fair amount versus what the formula allows. So we've been monitoring that. I wouldn't want anyone to think we're not aware and keeping an eye on it. I think we'll be okay.
All right.
Dr. Mills,
Yes, ma'am.
what would be considered as just supplementary sales? I hear that a lot.
Anything other than the meal.
Ice cream. So,
Yeah, everybody thinks ice cream and chips, but anything other than the meals.
Gummies, chips.
Well, they're really funny about what you can and can't sell now. I mean, it used to be, It used to be a lot of stuff like that. And Ms. Boyett's nodding her head because there was a time when you could make significant supplemental sales with some of the items. But they do count on that. And again, think about it. If you're going on a field trip, which we're not going on field trips, and child nutrition provided lunches for that, there's things for that we've lost. And so we've looked at the CEP piece has helped us some to weather some of that, and that piece has been a strength for our district as well as others. But at the same time, any of those additional meals and sales of other product is not coming in because there's nobody there. So that averages out pretty quickly, because that's how you replace some of your equipment. That's how you do some of your PD monies for your training for your staff. Look at increases in any salaries and handle the offset the costs. So our child nutrition folks do a really good job of monitoring things and keeping an eye on it, but it's tight. It's like any restaurant business right now. People aren't going out. And so we've seen that with suppliers. We've seen that with just managing the meal and the menus, because those change when things aren't available. So there's been a couple of times lately where we've had to change some things. I sent you that and some information about what we were doing to offset that, because some of our vendors just can't get access to product. So we've seen it in supply chain, and we've seen it also in delivery itself. So that's a good question, Ms. Barnes, but anything other than that meal. But it's not as much fun as it used to be.
But with that challenge hanging over their head, they've done a magnificent
They have,
job.
yeah.
They just,
I think it all goes back to when they took out those fryers and we can't have those fried tater tots. I just, that was a sad day. It was a sad. But no, they have done a great job.
The cookies.
The cookies weren't hurting me either. But
cinnamon roll.
yeah, all those things. But they do a really good job of monitoring and keeping track and just in time kind of supply to avoid some of that. And again, they've still got to manage what they can get. This is the hard part that people don't understand. Just like your meals at home, they've got to manage the nutritional requirements, plus the meal counts, plus what they can get on supply, and then be able to deliver that to a varying number of students and adults every day, and manage that ahead of time to meet everything. And I wouldn't want to do it. I mean, it's a puzzle. It's a serious puzzle, but I think we're going to be okay, but we've been talking about that all along. Okay. So, again, I think Adam's right to point it out. Everybody's worried about that, but we talked about that from day one because we knew it was going to affect us.
We're blessed to have someone that can manage.
Yes, Mary Catherine Tout and her staff do a fabulous job.
Dr. Mills,
Yes, ma'am.
I remember she was looking at one time at having meals that teachers could purchase.
Yes.
And take home with them. Was she able to implement that?
Dr. Williams, you want to talk about that some?
The last time Ms. Tout and I spoke about it, they were developing a plan for what that would look like. It would be for each day there'd be meals available and also take-home meals. So they were in the process of working on that. I think in conjunction with that, figuring out the supplemental sales and some of the shortfalls. So they were working through that as well. But that plan is still moving forward and hopefully be implemented soon.
Good.
Yeah, I think it got delayed. I was excited about it. I think it got delayed because about 2 or 3 weeks ago, one of our main suppliers, a lot of our meals and menu got blown away because you just couldn't get the materials. So, and now that we have folks in the buildings, that was another one. So, yeah, we're hoping we get that back on track. But that's still on go.
Right, and if they had some special, like soup day,
Soup
they
day.
might be able to do some good supplemental sales.
Absolutely.
If we could pre-order,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, I'm all for that one too.
boost there.
Throw a tot in there too. Yeah, throw a tot in there for me.
Forget the top, just do the
Soup day would be good though. Ain't nothing
Yes.
wrong with soup day. But yes, I'm excited that will help too. Anything like that. And I think that was very creative on their part to figure
Yes,
that out
yes.
and go through. And I think now the issue is supply. So it is affected almost all aspects of our system.
Are there other questions or comments?
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Farmer?
I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Stanley. He came in middle of the year. He made a seamless transition, very tough situation. That was very hard to do, and I appreciate him. And also, Dr. Mills, I want to congratulate you for seeing the talent that he has and bringing him to Wilson County. It looks like it's going to be a great fit for your team that you have established. So again, thank you so much.
They got a soup in there. I'm just gonna warm some of that up when I finish this and have some crackers.
Ms. Barnes? You're not muted. Thank you. I think you meant bringing him back to Wilson County. So, any other questions or comments? All right, then we'll move forward to the next discussion information item, which is contracts requiring board notification. Dr. Mills?
Let me get to my page here. Still stuck on. Madam Chair, board members, we have a handful of policies. These are under the threshold and just require notification, but first one is Encore, and that is for interactive ViewSonic panels. Those are the screens at Darden. And that contract is for an amount of $67,408.35. That would provide for 20 of those 75-inch panels. And if you'll notice, a lot of times now what are being implemented, Mr. Mayo again is on the call as well, but a lot of what's being installed now are panels versus the projectors because of the cost of the devices themselves as well as the bulbs and the replacements. So that is one. Swivel, which is the kits for the swivel kits, the 2 per the school buildings. That's an amount of $69,410. And Matthew, Mr. Matthew, if you want to share kind of what the swivels are, I'll butcher it probably.
Well,
Sure.
before
Good
he-
evening, everyone. The swivels just are a camera on it's a robotic camera basically that will record the teachers while they teach. So it allows for remote learning, but it also gives our teachers a good chance opportunity to reflect on their practice as well as they watch the videos back. So we'll be using them in the classrooms to share out best practices across the district post-COVID, but also be using it with the beginning teacher program too, to allow for teachers to videotape and reflect on their teaching.
Let me ask you a question, please, Mr. Mayo. The interactive ViewSonic panels, is that like a flat screen panel that's, tell us what that is, please.
Yeah, it's a 75-inch interactive television that's made out of Gorilla Glass. Didn't know that existed until about a year ago, but basically you can punch it and it doesn't bust. It is interactive to the touch, so you don't have to have a pen. You can have up to 5 kids at a time touching the board interactively, and it also has webcams built in for remote teleconferencing as well.
So it's basically like a smart board, but more interactive.
It's the new smart board. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay.
No projector bulbs. That's the good thing, and it comes with a 5-year warranty. And then the longevity has been really good across the industry.
Okay. Was that Mrs. Barnes that had a question?
Yes, I was wondering if the teachers who are trying to get certified national board, will they be able to use the equipment as well?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is tremendous because having worked with that program, this is really much needed for them. So thank you, Mr. Mayo, for making this happen.
Okay, other questions?
Other questions?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew Matthew would do a much better job explaining swivel than me. Yeah, no doubt. Encore, again, for another service, and that is the managed services for network and servers renewal. And that is in the amount of $72,000. Again, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes with our networks, and that's part of our annual maintenance for backbone issues for network and service application providers. Questions on Encore for that one? Okay. Last one is Arsenal Strength, and that is for weight training equipment for Bettyfield High School, and that is an amount of $54,969.63. The specs are in there, but that is to address the weight room issue at Bettyfield.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Boyette?
Dr. Mills, I know that Hunt is in great need of weight training equipment. Also, we be purchasing equipment for them as well.
I had looked at Bettyfield a while back. I got pictures and did some things. I'm really concerned about theirs from a safety standpoint when I went back through it. And I think after Bettyfield had their visit, the vendor visited Hunt as well for their athletic fields. The last conversation I had with Mr. Dahl was that the Booster Club was going to help with Hunt's project. So that's a conversation we've got to have as we go forward. I know that Bettyfield does not have the funding to do it. I am concerned about the quality of the equipment out there for theirs. So I think they've gotten quotes, but we've not gotten to that point yet.
So you're saying Hunt has gotten quotes because, yes, I know they're in great need and trying to find the money, but they do not have the money.
Yeah, the part of the, if you remember from our audit report, if you look at our capital fund balance. There's some funds in there, and there's some conversation we had last week with Dr. Williams and some others about some projects we could use with some of our fund balance for capital. That would be one we would look at with some of our athletic things. I have not had that conversation with Mr. Dahl yet, because I haven't seen the quotes yet.
Okay, well, if you'll follow up on that,
I will.
please, so that
I will.
make sure that Hunt gets.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I've tried to, I am more concerned, having visited all three of them, I am more concerned about Bettyfield's getting done right now when we get started. I think they've had some adjustments at some of the other ones, at least, in between. This was before I got here, to try and look and see who's got what as we do it. But that could be part of our discussion about some of the athletic fields as well, too, because that'll be part of it.
The concern at Bedingfield, that was the dressing rooms and the weight room has been a concern for a long time.
Yeah.
And, they hadn't been able to come up with the means to do anything about it. So I appreciate you recognizing that and helping them.
I visited all three of them with Fikes having moved from where it was previously when I was here before, and then the last work I saw done at Hunt was they had done some painting on some of the weights. But I looked at some of their benches, some of their equipments last week or 2 weeks ago with Mr. Dahl, and then Bettyfield's is in shape where it needs to be replaced as well too. I think it had been bought from North Johnson originally and brought in. This is way back before my time, but yes, those are 2 or 3 areas. But I do believe some of the fund balance we've got in capital we can address with some of those, and I think that's important for us to do. We've been good about having some funds for projects when we've carried some things over, but I think it's important for us to use some back if we're asking the county for some additional funds, and that's some projects that we could see and would be seen by the community and be appreciated and used. So that's one that we've done some field trips around. I encourage you to take a look too as you go to visit schools.
Other comments, questions?
Madam
Madam
Chair.
Chairman,
I'll do Mrs. Powell and then Mr. Farmer.
Yes, I was just looking over the Encore business, and I remember there was one thing that was stated at a school law practice seminar about cybersecurity, that is everyone's problem. One click can mess up everything. And this was stated because I just noticed how you have updates and you're doing renewals, and I think that's important to stay ahead of everyone else. And I know during the school board conference in Greensboro, a cybersecurity person, director of cybersecurity, said that this is called a cyber crime pandemic, is what they called it. So we have ransomware attacks all the time, and hackers are using our anxiety as our attacks. And I know you all, as well as myself, are receiving phone calls about fraudulent things, checks, about getting insurance, and we just need to stay several steps ahead. So I appreciate doing these updates and having this in place so that we can stay ahead of all the hackers that are out there.
Thank you very much. Mr. Farmer?
Dr. Fitch, I was able to build a weight room when I was at the school for the deaf, and it has no piers for a 1A weight situation, so I'm very familiar with the weights. I see he has put just about all of his marbles into isotonic weight training. He has pretty much decided not to go with plyometrics, ballistic training, contrast loading, or isometrics. I'm not going to question him on that. If that's the way he wants to go with free weights, he is certainly got a really good materials list here for a solid program. I do know that York also competes with Arsenal, and Titan competes with Arsenal. I looked at the prices on both of those other organizations, and in some places they beat Arsenal, in some places Arsenal beats them. I did have some concern, and I could not find it anywhere. And I spent probably an hour trying to find out why in the world he would need a custom roll mat 8x8. Most of the times they are used as a sound deadening actual mat for dropping weights from deadlift. And most of them are non-slip and they're resilient, and most of them are not only shock absorbing, but they are sound deafening. And I could not find anywhere where there was an 8x8. Most of them are 4x6s or even small, because it's just an area where you actually drop the weights from about 4 foot, maybe 3 foot. I'm sure he's got a reason. I'm not going to question it, but maybe in the future they could look at some of these other programs, and they may do them just a little better than what Arsenal has done.
All right, thank you for sharing that information, Mr. Farmer. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
just as Mr. Farmer congratulated Dr. Mills for hiring the nutritionist that we have now and so many other people, but Mr. Mayo also needs to be congratulated, because I thought we had a great technology program, but it gets better and better with the things that he's added and bringing into Wilson County schools, and I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Other comments or questions? All right, then we're now going to move to the Restart annual report to the State Board of Education. That can be Dr. Wilson. Dr. Mills. Dr. Wilson.
We have Ms. May in charge of federal programs. We have the two principals, Kelly Thomas and Claudia Spencer, and Dr. Terry Cobb on the line as well. Dr. Cobb has joined us as a part of consulting as we move towards the restart. So, Ms. May, I think you might like to share this information.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Dr. Fitch and other board members. So you will remember last December, Barnes Elementary and Hearn Elementary were approved for restart flexibilities. So as a part of that flexibility, we have to report annually to the state board. So what you have in your packet is a draft of the reports that will go to the state board in December. And these reports have to outline how we have used the restart flexibilities. So you will see that for Barnes, we were able to utilize the curriculum flexibility, a lesson plan template flexibility, as well as some calendar flexibilities. And at Hearn, we were able to use curriculum flexibilities, lesson plan template flexibility, and then we were also able to use the licensure flexibility at Hearn. Hearn was able to hire a counselor with a background in social work, and they were also able to hire a STEM lab facilitator that was not a certified teacher, but had a passion for STEM and has done an awesome job in building student interest in STEM areas. So both of our restart schools implemented a new math curriculum beginning in January last year. That curriculum is by Houghton Mifflin and it's called Math Expressions. So we started that implementation last year in January, kicked that off with some professional development that continued with support from Deborah Simons at the time as the math district math coordinator. And then we are also continuing that support currently this year with the help of Ms. Shackelford. The lesson plan format flexibility, Wanda Humphrey also provided weekly support for the implementation of that lesson plan flexibility, just working with the teachers at both of the schools in understanding the standards and what they look like in implementation. So there's been a lot of wraparound support from district personnel during this restart journey. So you will notice on these reports that there are 2 areas that were marked as not applicable. Those areas are school-defined measure and outcome metrics. Those 2 areas of the report were not required this year by DPI due to COVID and due to the fact that we did not have state testing during the 1920 school year. Those 2 areas of the report will be required moving forward.
May I ask a question?
I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Cobb. She has been a tremendous support for our restart schools and was really a critical part in preparing these draft reports that you have before you this evening.
May I ask a quick question, Ms. May?
Yes, ma'am.
As I read these, there were 4 goals for Barnes and actually 5 for Hearn. So those 2 areas actually are not counting. Is that what it is? Did I misread as I went through these?
Okay, I was having a little bit of trouble hearing you, Dr. Fitch. So I think you were speaking about the goals that were in the plan and their alignment to the flexibilities. Is that correct?
Well, I'm finding as I read through them that instead of in your précis, you say that there are 3 goals, but I guess those were in relation to the flexibilities. So the other goal that is in here in your report is not related to the flexibility?
Let me get a Barnes report in my hand real quick and look at that with you. So the first goal in the Barnes report is related to increasing teachers' professional knowledge. So that is connected to the curriculum flexibility.
Okay.
The second goal is written specifically for that lesson plan flexibility.
Yes.
The third goal is written around some professional development that we did on effective classroom environment, noting the calendar flexibility because the teachers at Barnes actually worked on a Saturday to attend that professional development and do some additional setup in their classrooms around classroom environment. And then, yes, ma'am, so I see what you're, that 4th goal is the employment flexibility goal, that licensure goal. And once this actually happened after the pre-cease was submitted. So we went back and added that licensure flexibility goal for both of the schools. We originally only had that in for the Hearn report, that after some discussion with a DPI person that works specifically with Restart, we were advised to add that goal in for both of our schools because both of our schools employ teachers that are not fully licensed. Okay. And so we did add that goal.
And
if that answers your question.
That does answer it for Barnes, and let me make sure. For Hearn, that has a flexibility outcome goal 5. So that again, it was not in keeping with your précis because for Hearn you outlined 4 goals, but then when I counted and went through them, there were actually 5.
Yes, ma'am. And again, those are changes that we made after we had a meeting with GPI, and they reviewed the goals that we had established and gave us some feedback on those goals.
All right.
So the flexibilities that are noted in the précis, are still the same, but we adjusted the goals.
Okay, all right. So since this
And I
has,
did,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, and I didn't note, I didn't say this, but we, because we were fast-tracked last year, our approval process, we were not able to use budget flexibility. But this year, during the 2021 school year, we will be allowed to use that flexibility as well.
Okay. Are there other questions?
Mrs. May, this is Velma Barnes. You answered my question because I was going to ask about the calendar flexibility. And you said at Barnes, they had teachers that work on Saturdays. Did that involve the students, or was that for planning?
That was for professional development and some work in their restructuring their classrooms. In the future, we were advised by DPI to only note calendar flexibility if it did involve students. So that was part of the feedback that we received from DPI when they previewed our report and gave us some feedback.
Okay, thank you.
So this is just an informational item. It does not need approval, correct?
That's correct.
All right.
Yes, ma'am. It is just for information. These reports will be entered in the NC Star online platform that we use for school improvement planning, and will be submitted to DPI later this month.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Powell?
I just wanted to make one note to Ms. May that I appreciate the evidence of success here, the goals. I noticed one on page 7, I think this is Margaret Hearn, that I really would like to read out because this is something that's exceptional when we have people on staff doing this. It says, even though the counselor started 1 week prior to the start of remote learning, she provided consistent activities and lessons for students that focus on developing the social, emotional well-being of students. Student participation was monitored in order to address individual needs. She finalized the PBIS plan for the upcoming year. In addition, she stayed in contact with students and their parents who were experiencing trauma due to illnesses or accidents impacting family members. So I want to send out just a well wish and kudos to her for acknowledging the need and just jumping in even though she came in late. That's the kind of people that we have on board. Thank you.
All right. Other comments or questions? We thank you so much, Ms. May, and for others who worked with getting this prepared and ready to go. And we look forward to it being received successfully at DPI. All right. So now we're at the action items, 2020-2021 budget amendments. And Dr. Mills, Dr. Williams, Mr. Stanley, whomever.
Mr. Stanley can walk us through these.
Mr. Stanley, are you still with us?
He should be.
I see you.
Got before you 3 budget amendments. The first one is the state public school fund, the one I'm looking at. And it increased to $103,761, of which $73,741 was principal bonuses. We got about 12 principals who got bonuses based on what they got last year, because they didn't have the data for this year, so they just kept them held harmless. And then we got $29,220 for the coronavirus relief funds for exceptional children, and then $800 for August and September substitute pay. Any questions on the state? The local revenue fund, the thing there is the Ward 4 check. That's the check that comes in once a month at $34,056. And we've done that check, that was the, September check, I believe. And the substance prevention program was some money that was donated for that particular program at $1,500. And the last one is capital outlay, and there's $265,000 appropriated fund balance to purchase that land at Hunt High School.
Members of the board, you've heard the budget amendments as presented. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mercer?
I move that the full board approve a budget amendment 102, 402, and 802 as presented by administration.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Mercer with a double second, Mrs. Boyette and Mr. Farmer, that we approve the 2020-2021 budget amendments, 102 State Public School Fund, 402 Capital Outlay Fund, and 802 Local Special Revenue Fund. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please record your vote. Mr. Farmer?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Breen? And myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Contracts requiring board approval.
Got our friends Encore again. Board members for 2 contracts that exceed the $90,000. The outdoor access points are one of these contracts that's for 98 access points. That's in the amount of $96,715.53. That would put them at our school sites, and it would provide some access for Wi-Fi community hotspots. And then another service from Encore is the installation of the outdoor access points. And that contract amount is $137,631.20.
Members of the board, you've heard the information regarding the 2 contracts for Encore. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mercer?
I move we approve the contracts both for the purchase of the 98 outdoor access points and the second contract for the installation of the outdoor access comments as recommended by administration.
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Mercer, seconded by Mrs. Boyette, followed by Mrs. Barnes, that we approve the 2 Encore contracts, first for the 98 outdoor access points, second for the installation of the outdoor access points as recommended by the administration. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Farmer?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer?
Aye.
Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Breen? Aye. Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. Approval of school improvement plans.
Madam Chair, members of the board, you have received the school improvement plans a week or so ago and reviewed those. I've received some feedback, and we have had discussion about that feedback and working towards making some of those edits with the principals.
All right. Are there any questions?
I have
Mr.
one.
Mercer?
And without looking at it directly, but for, and I think I understood what they were saying, but I think it could be said a little better. Frederick Douglass's on page 5, they referred to improving by X number of percent. And I think they were meaning they were going to improve by percentage points.
Gotcha.
And which,
Every year, that's gotta be,
Yeah.
that's happened every year.
and,
We'll check it.
but I mean, I know what they meant.
I know, yeah.
But,
But I know exactly what you're talking about. We've done it too. I do it all the time. It's
And
points.
Okay.
that's the only thing that I made note of.
I certainly understand and agree, and like Dr. Mills said, we have talked about that quite a bit, that there's a difference between the two.
Well, sometimes when you're so focused on the substance,
Uh-huh.
you can go right past the wording and knowing what you're meaning when you say it. So
Yes.
I don't think it's a terrible thing. It's just something we can look at and we can clean that up a tad.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? And members of the board, what is your pleasure in regard to the school improvement plans?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Boyer?
I move that we approve the school improvement plans as presented.
Second.
May I ask a question? As presented or with any necessary edits?
With any necessary edits as Dr. Wilson spoke on.
Okay. all
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
All right, it has been moved and properly seconded that we approve the school improvement plans with any necessary edits. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please state your vote. Mr. Farmer?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. I'd like to thank all of the teams at the various schools for all of the work that went into managing and creating the school improvement plans. And it's a team effort, and it does take quite a bit of work. Took us quite a bit of work to read them. But we thank you so very much, and we hope that they work in making things a lot better for the students of the system.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mercer?
I too would like to comment on that because one of the things I look at is who they include on their team. And I think they did a great job of being inclusive. I mean, with the parents and classified employees as well as certified.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Boyette?
I'd like to add too, you're right, doing a school improvement plan is a very big task, but this year I felt like they were doing it sort of like pin the tail on the donkey, blindfolded, because you have no test results
Yes.
and you're trying to write a plan for improvement, knowing that you don't know where your children are.
That would be right.
You know, that was the first question that I raised as I started reading, and then I said, oh, it's a different animal this year because of the pandemic and where we were having ended the year and the lack of some testing and
Hard data.
verification of work. And we do have to be mindful of the fact that as our children have been out of school, that there is that potential slippage, which impacts the beginning time for this year. And then when we started the year, not in place, and we've just brought the elementaries back, it's gonna impact everything for all of this work that was done. And so it's very critical as these plans go forward this year.
Madam Chair, I too commend our school leadership teams and the coaches, because each school is assigned a coach, someone from the district level. And so in the midst of trying to handle the things that were going on with COVID, they also are trying to do their regular business of learning at the same time, and did a phenomenal job at balancing both.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I too would like to compliment the principals and all of the leadership teams. And my comment to Dr. Wilson was I was hoping and I was glad to see that the schools were addressing the social and emotional and mental needs of our students, especially during this pandemic. I thought that was exceptional when I looked at the plans.
And Madam Chair, to add to that, Dr. Wilson, sometimes we do our best work under pressure. So this pandemic has really put us under a lot of pressure, and people have really gone to the extreme. They've really gone far and beyond what they normally would do. And the work is really showing. Great job.
All right, thank you so very much. And the last action item is the Beginning Teachers Support Program plan.
Madam Chair, you got Dr. Parker and Ms. Jobe and Ms. Jernigan on the call to address this.
Good evening.
Good evening.
In our continuing efforts to provide high-quality instruction for our students, teacher retention is a huge piece of that, and it is especially critical in the beginning years of teaching. This plan addresses this, and at this time, Ms. Jernigan and Ms. Joe will share some facts with you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and school board members. We appreciate this time to talk with all of you and spend this time with you. There is one addition to the Beginning Teacher Support Program plan that we have already in place. Over the past time, the general statute has been passed that the educator preparation programs, which means the colleges, will be monitored. And a part of that monitoring process, all first-year teachers in the state of North Carolina in public and charter schools will receive a survey, as well as their principals at the end of their first year teaching. We have to include that in our Beginning Teacher Support Plan. Our role in this will be to support, encourage our first year teachers and our principals to complete this survey. We will not actually distribute the survey. It will come from North Carolina DPI. We are not aware yet if we will see any results from the survey. We will be informed about that later on. But out of our 130 current beginning teachers right now, this will affect about 50 first year teachers, give or take a few. But we will see at the end of the year what time frame that will be. We don't know yet when that will be released. And we are hoping, all beginning teacher support coordinators have requested that we be included on the mass email that goes out, just so that we can see the timeline and see what the message is that goes out. So we're hoping to be included later on.
Madam Chair.
Are there any questions about that?
Okay, Mrs. Boyette?
What's the purpose of the survey? Is it to measure the effectiveness of the beginning teacher program in that particular county or that particular school? What's the goal?
The goal is to find out how educators are being prepared for licensure for teaching. So with all the changes in our lateral entry to residency licensure, and that our residency licensure teachers must affiliate with one school, now we know what school each teacher is being trained in, whether it's the traditional program of a 4-year education degree and getting licensed, or going back in the residency licensure program and being educated by that one university. So this is a part of the university preparation monitoring. So they're trying to determine, I guess, very similar to what our teacher working conditions kind of similar data about how prepared they feel that they have been made by their university.
Okay, so it's not actually measuring the school system, it's measuring the university or the
Right.
academic preparation.
Yes, it just has to be included in our plan because it directly affects our beginning teachers.
I have a comment.
Mrs. Barnes?
Velma. I want to compliment Yvette and Ms. Jernigan. I work with the beginning teacher program. It has really grown and expanded. And I do have two family members who are coaches of coaches and they work through the UNCG system. And one of them talked to me about the surveys that were being prepared, and they've already gotten some feedback at UNCG, I know, and they're working toward getting that information out.
Good.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mercer?
Mr. Jernigan, you and Ms. Jobe and your entire team is to be commended. You have quite a huge task. But on this survey, you're talking about feedback. I'm hoping you'll get feedback in a manner that'll help you, but do you think that we should be hoping and expecting for feedback that goes beyond Wilson County? So maybe we can share and people can share with us on the efforts that are being made.
We don't know yet if we're going to actually receive any data from this survey because it is administered by North Carolina DPI. That has been a question in our last beginning teacher coordinator meeting. And at our next meeting, we're hoping to get that answer.
Well, the best of luck to you, and I appreciate all that you do.
So possibly we are just the conduit to have the survey information gathered without having the possible benefit of understanding or being presented with the data that comes from it.
Yes, ma'am.
And also, Ms. Jernigan, I remember that in the good nature that those teachers need, and it's quite a large group, I'm glad that directions are coming from a happy place.
Always, Mr. Mercer.
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Powell?
Yeah, and Ms. Jernigan, when you're talking about the academic preparation, I want to put a little note in here. I was looking at page 2, and this is the 6th bullet, where it says learning about exceptional children laws and procedures, including appropriate use of seclusion, restraint students. I'm not sure how much training our general ed teachers have on being able to teach our special ed population. I don't know if they have a special ed 101, but that's something I think that would really benefit that they need, because a lot of them get in the classroom and they're in an inclusive setting where they have to teach this child that's autistic or learning disabled or traumatic brain injury, and they're not aware of how to do that. I mean, there is an IEP, but you know the practice of what is expected of them and how, because each child is different. You have to handle each child differently. So I think that would be something that I'm hoping that maybe I realize to get more training. I know that there was dual certification at one time. I guess that's still offered. We can be general ed and special ed, and that's a plus. But there's a lot of people that are not, receiving that, or not, looking forward to doing that. But the training, I think, would benefit our teachers immensely in some form or fashion, because as a retired special ed educator myself, I always went to my general ed teachers and I was their resource pretty much. And sometimes with the number of students that they have, that's not always possible. But I'm hoping that maybe the survey will show that there's more training needed for our general ed teachers to be able to appropriately give a fair and appropriate education to our students with disabilities.
We agree with you, Ms. Powell. We wholeheartedly agree that there definitely needs to be more training in place for our teachers, because, traditionally it's maybe one class, one practicum where you observe maybe a total of 15 hours in your sophomore or junior year if you're in the traditional route. And if you're a residency licensure, then you're learning it on the job.
Right.
So we agree with that and hope that information will be gathered on this survey as well.
Okay. Thank you. Great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Well, having been a person at the university level, And the legislature or DPI only mandated one course, and that one course was basically the Intro to Exceptional Children. And in that one course, they were expected to get everything with a little bit of information for each of the disability areas as well as gifted and talented. They had to get the laws and they had to get the IEP process. And when you try to squeeze all of that in one 14-week period, it really does not adequately give all of the information, and many times the regular ed students don't get anything in the methodology of working with those exceptional students. So hopefully this will give DPI more information to give to the colleges, indicating that there is a need for more information and more than one class in exceptionality.
We agree, Dr. Fitch.
All right, if there's nothing else, this is an action item. Members of the board, what is your pleasure in regard to the Beginning Teacher Support Program plan?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Barnes?
I move that we approve the Beginning Teacher Support Program plan as presented.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Barnes, seconded by Mr. Mercer, that we approve the Beginning Teacher Support Program plan as presented by the administration. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Please record your vote, Mr. Farmer.
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Breen? Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much for
Thank
the
you.
work that went into this. Mr. Farmer?
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I may, since this will be the last time, probably I take you into closed session. I want to tell you it's been my immense pleasure to serve the students of Wilson County for 12 years. I appreciate the trust that the parents have engendered to me. Also, it's been an honor to work with this board, and I have the utmost respect for each one of you. You are a platinum board with platinum standards, and I've seen them all in 12 years. You have no rivals. It's reassuring to me, and it should be to Wilson County, that you can handle anything that's thrown at you in the future. I wish you good luck, and I wish you Godspeed. Also, in light of what we all know, those awards have been long forthcoming. So therefore, please withhold my pension spiking in fairness to the over-generous monthly salary we receive. And I do hope in all seriousness, and I hope they are listening now, please, out of respect, if nothing else, study the counties around us. Study the counties in eastern North Carolina, because quite honestly, the compensation paid this board is not even in the ballpark of what they should be paid. In fact, it's not even in the zip code. I will take you now into closed session. I move that Wilson County Board of Education go into closed session, consider confidential personnel matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A, 1 and 6, and 115C-319 through 321 to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11, A1, and to North Carolina General Statutes 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 U.S. Code 1232G, to establish or give instructions concerning the Board of Education's negotiating position concerning a potential acquisition and/or lease of real property as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A5, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Farmer, seconded by Mrs. Boyette, that the Wilson County Board of Education go into closed session to consider confidential personnel matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and 6 and 115C-319 through 321, to consider confidential student matters as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A1 and North Carolina General Statutes 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20, United States Code 1232G, to establish or give instructions concerning the Board of Education's negotiating position concerning a potential acquisition and/or lease of real property as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A5, and to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please record your vote. Mr. Farmer?
Aye.
Mr. Mercer? Mrs. Barnes?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Powell?
Aye.
Mrs. Boyette?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Myself, Dr. Fitch, aye. Let the record reflect that the motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned to closed session.